All right, Jack, 9 penalties to 1. 3 outright busted coverages by my count. Gave up an onside kick, 4 drop passes that were critical in the first half. And that's why, look, if we come in here and Texas loses this game, sure, Texas fans will be disappointed, but it's just how they lost again. Put your best foot forward and see what happens. Let the chips fall. And, I understand that, the drops and penalties have been a year-long issue and that we maybe shouldn't expect them to suddenly disappear against a top 5 opponent on the road. But, they did have a bye week. They had a completely healthy roster. They did have a sharp performance against Vanderbilt for 3 quarters, and then we saw what happened in the fourth. But in the end, they really played a good football game. The Oklahoma game was clean. It's just what has led to the revert. I mean, Sark knew how big this game was for his team. And after the lead was cut to 4 points midway through the third quarter, Kirby Smart sensed the momentum was changing. I mean, Kirby Smart delivered a masterclass of coaching. He understood we can't punt the ball back right now. His starting middle linebacker, who's his best player, is his quarterback of his defense. R.J. Allen is kind of like, or C.J. Allen's kind of like Michael Taft for Georgia on defense, and he went out with that injury, and you could see the defense starting to leak. And Arch Manning starting to get, Arch had a rhythm all night, but the receiver started to catch the football, namely Ryan Wingo. And so what did he do? He took over the game. Now, Kirby Smart, yes, he has a team that's well coached enough to do that, but he went for it on 4th and a yard from his own 29-yard line, Jack. His own 29, up 4 in the third quarter. That's crazy. But went for it. Trusted his team. Understood short yardage situation. We can't punt this ball back. My defense is running out here. We're leaking oil. I need to keep the ball. And then he got an undisciplined favor from Colin Simmons a few plays later when he jumps off sides and get a free 5 yards and a first down, and then they score 2 plays later. Then the onside kick. Are you kidding me? I mean, in a 21-10 game at that point, you're going to give them short field position, but no, Texas isn't going to be disciplined enough to do it. You can't make that play, Colin Simmons. You can't give up an onside kick. And we'll hear Sark saying it right coming up here. They practiced the play. I mean, they worked on, remember the self-scouting of the bye week? Right. We're going to self-scout and look into ourselves, and they looked at this. Let's hear Sark talking about the onside kick because this was, I don't want to say they knew it was coming, but they knew Kirby Smart had that up his sleeve. And listen to Sark. This is the buy-in he's getting from his team. They worked on this in practice this week.
Not that onside kick in particular, but we knew where we might be vulnerable to one. We actually practiced that kick in practice with anticipation that it might occur, and we didn't field the ball, And so, it was a risk they were willing to take because it's a 21-10 game. We field that ball. We're getting the ball in the plus 45, and with offense with some momentum to go score, they took the risk and they recovered it. And inevitably, those are momentum-changing plays for sure in games. Any game in particular, but in games like this, those are momentum-changing plays. They took the risk, they made the play, and it was a heck of a kick and nice recovery by them.
All right, so they worked on it, they drilled it, they were supposed to practice it, and they weren't ready for it. Was no one shouting from the sidelines, say, be ready for the onside kick, be ready for the onside kick? I don't know. Was somebody shouting and reminding Colin Simmons, hey, let's not jump off sides here? And again, you can blame the coaches because it's been all year, but you also have to blame the players. I mean, these guys are out there. I mean, they're well compensated these days with NIL. Not saying just because they make money they can be criticized, but it's more of a, hey now, but why is this team's football IQ so low? And why?
That's been pretty staggering all year.
Because last year's team, and I know each year's different, and this is the life of teams like a box of chocolates, as I've said all year. I will say, because listening to my own words on the box of chocolates Longhorn, I just expected a different look last night or Saturday night. I really did. That's my expectation. I expected a clean, sharp performance coming off the Vanderbilt game. I thought they turned a corner with that and used the bye week, get healthy, get Michael Taft back. No. All that, and that's the calling card of this team. And I'll say this, Jack. I mean, I know there'll be a lot of conversation here about Steve Sarkisian giving up play calling duties and kind of hiring an offensive coordinator. And I've been on board with that. But you know what? That game crystallized it for me more than anything else. Not because he's a good play caller, but when you watch Kirby Smart work a sidelines when you watch Kirby Smart work officials, and I know all other opposing fan bases hate Kirby Smart, but there's not a better sideline officiating worker. There's a reason he gets there, but also understanding game flow.
Yeah.
Like when it was time to not give the ball back to Texas and find a way. If you're calling plays and you're wearing the headset, you're not in the game flow, in my opinion. I've never had to do it, but there's a reason Nick Saban didn't wear a headset and call plays. There's a reason Kirby Smart doesn't. There's a reason, the elite coaches don't. And we know Sark, since that win at Alabama 37 games ago now, has not won one of these games against one of these elite teams and elite coaches. He's 0 for 3 now against Kirby. He's 0 for 2 against Kalen DeBoer, or 0 for 1 against Kalen DeBoer, 0 for 2 against Ryan Day. All have offensive coordinators and all don't call their own plays anymore. You probably should consider it because they don't. And as when Sark was asked earlier this year, would you give up play calling? He says, no, that's why I was hired. Well, when you were hired, you were calling plays for Nick Saban, who's the greatest coach of all time. Maybe take a note. And because again, watching Kirby work his sidelines, work his team, that to not have to be working with your quarterbacks and offense and play calling, that frees you up to do that kind of stuff. And we don't see Sark working officials very often. He doesn't want to work officials, but you have to. It's part of the game. It's part of the game.
Yeah, I think two things are true. One, Steve Sarkisian is an elite play caller / offensive mind, whatever you want to say. And two, being a head coach in the SEC and, like you said, doing the Kirby Smart thing, managing the sideline, is a full-time job. You can't do both of those things at the same time.
Agreed. And the best in the game show that to you.
Right.
The best in the game show that to you. So Sark's got to get out of his own ego and understand, in my opinion.
Yeah, call plays if you want, but then
you don't think Kirby Smart is. Glenn Schumann's standing there. He's his defensive coordinator standing next to him. You don't think Kirby has influence on that?
Right. Exactly.
Kirby's listening to what's going on, and if they want to make adjustments, they powwow on that. You don't think Ryan Day and Brian Hartline at Ohio State are going over offensive corrections they're going to make? But Brian Hartline, before that it was Chip Kelly. They're running the offense, and that's something Sark's going to, I think, have to give up. And again, not because he's not an elite play caller or play designer or those things. Not his fault. The guys, can't catch the ball. Now, I do think in this game, it is a fair criticism of Sark to say, well, why when Trey Wisner was getting going running the football, why did you stop running the football? But at the same time, I will defend Sark in that, hey, man, if I draw up plays where guys are schemed open and wide open and Arch makes a good throw, they got to catch the football. They got to catch the football. That's obvious. But, again, this has been a problem all year, and that's where it's a fair question back to if the same players and the same things continue to happen, well, A, why are they out there? And B, why does it keep happening? And if they're going to be out there, why isn't it getting fixed? Why is Colin Simmons continually jumping off sides in the biggest of moments? And at this point, you don't make excuses for it. This can't happen. Ryan Wingo can't continue to drop passes. And I know Ryan Wingo's out there with a dislocated thumb, but again, it wasn't like he was reliable catching the ball before he had the thumb injury. But it's more of the same for the Longhorns. But yes, frustrating. But that's what happens when you play elite teams. That's why the record 0-7 in those elite games in the last 2.5 years is a fair criticism. That's when you have to be your best. The margins are going to be extremely slim. And, this one was not. This was 35-10, and the margins weren't close. And that, if we're talking about measuring sticks and barometers, that's concerning for sure. Let's hear from the Longhorn leader, Michael Taft. He was back. Here's his side from the players' side of this thing. As we talk about the coaches, here's Michael Taft from the player side.
Football is a game of every single play. If you think about it, they score, they go up 21-10, they get an onside kick. Now they have the ball at the 40-yard line. They score again. Now we get stopped. They score again. It's just like that. But if you have the same type of playing as the second and third quarter, then it's way different. So it's not like the big, bad Georgia Bulldogs. It was we hurt ourselves. And like I said, I got to give respect to them because they earned it. They drove down the field and they scored on, I think, a really good defense. And then on their defensive side, they stopped a really good offense, in my opinion. So, at the end of the day, we got to step up as leaders and understand that at the end of the day, it's on us. But it comes down to each play mentality, and we lost a couple of those plays that just hurt us.
Yeah, and they didn't make mistakes. So that's the other thing about Kirby's side. And the Georgia Bulldogs, they had very few mistakes, penalties. And I know fans are frustrated they don't get called for penalties, but you couldn't go into Athens and expect them to get a bunch of flags called. That wasn't going to happen, and you couldn't have that the other side. And there weren't any penalty calls, Jack, on Texas that I thought were bad calls. I mean,
Right.
I mean, that was a holding on Warren Roberson on the kick return. They jumped off sides a couple times, and Colin Simmons clearly jumped into it wasn't like they were phantom calls all over the place. I'm sure there were some Georgia holds that didn't get called.
They
but
kept the laundry in the pocket.
Well, that's
on
Athens.
the arch
You're going,
pick, whatever.
You're going into Athens.
Oh,
Well,
and by the way, none of those calls would have changed the game. You got your ass kicked up and down the field. I'm not making a single
you're right.
excuse.
DeAndre Moore got turned sideways on the arch interception and wasn't able to finish his route.
Right.
But it was done in a pretty shallow way. It was low. It was at his hip, or you kind of between
They're even better at cheating than you.
Yeah, well, you're going to grab a little bit. Real quick before we get to the timeout and some other news, what was the Longhorn basketball side of things this weekend? Longhorn men and women both got victories over the weekend, and
Yes,
Horns
it
at
was
half-past.
2-0. The men with a 71-55 win over Kansas City.
And I know this,
University of
Sean Miller.
Missouri, Kansas
Sean Miller,
City.
for his first time as the head coach of Texas, is not happy.
Yeah,
They practiced hard yesterday because that was not a good performance against a bad team, and that's the first time in a post game you've heard Sean Miller. He was pretty angry with his team's effort.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, they came in a little lackadaisical on a Saturday, just couldn't shoot the ball at all. Dalen Swain had 13 and 7. Another coach that's also probably pretty bad is Vic Shaver, because how could you give up 45 points?
Dang.
Unacceptable. He scored 111. But yeah, 111-45 over Texas Southern yesterday. Madison Booker, Elia Crump, and Taya Sidbury all had 18 points, all leading the way there for the Horns. Also, for volleyball, 3-1 over South Carolina, wrapping up the regular season. They are the 3 seed in this SEC tournament that gets started this weekend. But, when there's 16 teams in a conference, there's like a couple buys at the beginning. So Texas don't know their opponent. It could be one of 4 teams they'll play on Sunday.
There you go. Also, 2 o'clock this afternoon from Melissa, Texas, Austin Gooseby. The 5-star guard, the brother of little brother of Trevor Gooseby, the Longhorn starting left tackle. The combo guard is going to make his announcement today in Melissa, Texas. This kid has an elite combination of height and length and vertical pop, ball handling. He's the full deal. We talked to Jerry Hamilton about it last week. 6'5" combo guard, 6'9" wingspan, Jack. And he will announce today, and apparently it's down to Texas and BYU, of which school he's going to attend. His brother Trevor is already here. So we'll keep an eye on that this afternoon, 2 o'clock from Melissa, Texas.